Yes, that's right. We are back. Survivor Know-It-Alls here after episode number 8. Steven Fishback has still got it. Merge boots, baby.
Wow, how about that, Rob? I won. We didn't even have a contest, and I won. Nick's exit is the most validating thing that's ever happened to me, maybe in my life.
In what way? Because he was the traditional merge boot, or you felt like that he was going to be one of the first
No, I
people out
said it
here
2
at the
weeks
merge?
ago. I was like, 2 weeks ago, I said Nick is going to be it in the next 2 weeks.
Mhm.
Last week, everyone was like, oh, Nick, he's playing such a good game. Nick can't go out. I was like, nope, he's going out next week. Boom. It happened,
Boom.
Rob. Boom.
Right.
I want to give everyone listening, watching a heads up. I'm recovering from foot surgery, so I'm high on Percocet. So
Yeah.
Steven's the best. Know-it-all. Severe gastrointestinal distress won't affect him at all.
Yeah. So wait, hold on. So you had surgery on your foot. Are you doing okay? It was not staph, was it?
It was not staph. It was not related to what Neil had. It was not Mount St. Fishback, but it was just a busted up toe. I had it when I was out there. It wasn't a Survivor-related injury. Survivor didn't help, but it was I can't blame CBS for this.
Okay, it's the one thing. All right. So we got a lot to talk about here.
Big
tonight, of course.
episode tonight. Crazy episode.
Fun episode.
Season
Lots of fun
delivers.
stuff. Yeah. Season is still delivering that we are moving along a really exciting vote, and we have a lot to talk through. Who were the big winners and the big losers of the night? Where do we go from here? All that and much, much more here live on the Survivor Know-It-Alls. Of course, coming up on Thursday, very excited to get Nick on the podcast tomorrow morning. We'll have our exit interview with Nick, hear what he has to say about all this. That should be fun, right?
Yeah, Nick is. I mean, we've given Nick a hard time. I've definitely given Nick a hard time. I thought he was a great character. He seemed to be having a lot of fun out there. He seemed to, even tonight, even when he was like, yeah, I'm being a jerk, and I probably shouldn't be, but whatever. It's not great gameplay, but it's great television. And it was really a joy to watch him play. And he knew the game. He knew the game well. He was not executing that well, but he was having fun.
Yeah, and it was, all in good fun. And nobody got hurt. It was good TV to watch. I think everybody that's a fan of the show thought this was a fun episode tonight. So all good stuff all around. And then, of course, we'll get to our recap podcast. How about Chaos Cast on the recap?
Whoa!
Yeah, how about that? Very exciting.
Whoa!
That'll be good. Get her on there.
She knows from Merge Chaos. I feel like Chaos Cast is actually exactly the person you want for this episode, where Sydney is part of one alliance, and she says, "Nope, going over to this other thing. I'm going to go do my own thing. Going to mess it up." And I think it was for a very similar reason as Cass, where Sydney, like Cass, was not. We'll obviously talk about this. She was getting bad vibes from her core, and so she was like, "You know what? I'm not. This is not working for me."
Yeah. Perfect time to talk to Cass almost any season around this point. So very excited to talk to her. And then also voicemails with Akiva Winokur coming up that we recorded our recap of the 100th Seinfeld episode. That's going to be coming up for you guys on Poster Recaps. And Steven, I'm about to blindside you here. Here comes a total blindside.
Total blindside.
Are you aware that this is the 100th episode of Survivor Know-It-Alls?
Whoa! This is crazy! No, I wasn't aware.
And on
what
top
are we doing
of that,
do we have a special guest?
Hold on. No, it's you. And on top of that, this is also tonight the 100th podcast you and I have done together.
Wait, how is it? Is that true?
Yeah,
have there been
I
that
know
many
people
guest
are
stars?
well, duh, it's the 100th Know-It-Alls. But
But there have been a few ellipses, yeah.
There was a whole season where Steven wasn't on the show. There's been other nights where he's not here.
Rob, I feel like this should be more about us and less about anybody else. Should we just take a moment and share and chat?
Yes, happy 100, Steven.
Oh my gosh, that's crazy. I wish I had a cupcake.
Yeah, a muffin, how about?
Yeah, or a muffin.
or a muffin, either one.
Yeah.
What does Muffin think, though?
Who's Muffin?
Yeah.
So happy 100. We'll keep it 100 here tonight as we break
gosh.
down a very exciting episode. So, yeah, very happy anniversary to you.
Yeah, happy anniversary. Wow. This is really special. I feel like we should have, a bottle of wine. Something...
Yeah, okay, one day we will. We'll celebrate next week. 1 week from tonight, we'll be together live for episode number 9 of Survivor Kaoh Rong. We'll be at Caroline's on Broadway.
Not a special 101.
We'll dress in Dalmatian costumes. How about that?
Okay.
All right. All right, there we go. So let's get into this for next week, the highly anticipated Know-It-Alls 101. But here we are tonight on Know-It-Alls 100. And Stephen, this really was very, very interesting. Where do you want to take this from? Because there's so many different moving parts. I guess that you mentioned Sydney. Let's talk about it from her perspective. She seems to have a pretty solid position here at the final 10. She's with the Braun group. She's in that 7-person majority. Seemingly, you would think that she could run the numbers down a little bit here, but she is so turned off by Nick and what he's doing, and she's not really loving Jason and where she is with Scott. So she's going to go out there and freelance and bring in Debbie and bring in Aubrey and get, working with Michelle and with Julia, although it doesn't seem like she's the one who owns that relationship with them, which could be a potential dicey situation for her. What do you think about this move for Sydney?
Well, so let's set it up a little bit more, right? She's been with Jason and Scott since the very beginning. Their proposed final 7 is the 3 of them, right? Scott, Jason, Sydney, and Braun, and then you have Ty, Julia, Nick, Michelle, and that's it. And, I think Sydney was sort of part of that core Braun group, but she's seeing that the guys on Braun are spending a lot more time with Nick now, right? And Ty is friends with Scott, Julia's tight with Scott, and now Sydney is seeing that she's on the outs of her own sort of core alliance. And when the fact that, like, Jason and Scott are palling around with Nick, Sydney was wrong, right, about the boat thing. The girls go out on a boat. They come back. Nick goes talk to Julia. Sydney gets paranoid. You guys are checking up on me. That's not what happened. But she's right about her core read, which is that the guys are operating kind of and keeping her at a disadvantage. They're working more with Nick. They're sort of pushing her out. Even last week, Nick, when Jason said to Nick, when Scott said to Jason, Nick, and Ty has an idol, he specifically said, don't even tell Sydney this. So I think Sydney's correct that she needs to somehow get herself back into the core of the game by making this move tonight. She does that. She upends the game, and she's still got that core Braun strong, but she's also the one who's founding this all-women's alliance.
So was it too early for her? Because to me, I feel like that I love the move for TV. I wonder if this is too early for Sydney to make this move, because it feels like to me this is the kind of move which really shakes up the game and maybe completely cripples like what Jason and Scott was going to do, but not the kind of move that results in Sydney winning the game.
But this is her chance when she has the 5-5, right? This is 5-5 women's for the women. If you're not too soon in Survivor now, you're too late. I think that at the right time, everyone's expecting it now. This is not. This is super new school Survivor, right? Where everyone knows, okay, final 7, we know something's going to happen, or like, okay, this is the last person there. We know to expect it, and they're on their guard and they're controlling against it. You have to be a little early in order to make things happen now. When do you think would have been the right time?
For me, I don't know. I feel like that you could have potentially done this later on. And again, now you and I sat here during Survivor Cagayan and said, Tony Vlacho, what is he doing blindsiding LJ at Final 9? Boy, that's way too early for this. We do not like this move. So what do we know in terms of this? But this next vote that's coming up, I think that now Jason and Scott are going to be pretty pissed that Sydney ends up not voting with them, unless she tries to spin it back around. Was this like a one-vote thing where she just wanted to get rid of Nick because she doesn't like him, and then a la sort of like, Tony is a great example of that, coming back into the fold and saying, hey, voting blocks, I just had to vote with them. I didn't like Nick. I'm back with you guys.
That's what I liked about this move, and that's why I think it's great, is because I think she can go back to Scott and Jason and say, she's expressed her discontent with Nick. I think she can go back to Scott and Jason and be like, I told you I didn't like him. I got rid of him. I'm still with you guys. And that's why I think it's great, because now she can kind of still move between these different alliances. The other thing is, what are Scott and Jason going to do? Sydney's effectively isolated them from all of their allies. Michelle and Julia have just voted against them. They can't come back and Nick is gone. And Ty, we don't even know what Ty was doing. We need to talk about that later. Ty cast a vote against Jason.
Yeah.
Like, I'm assuming that's because maybe he like promised. That's got to be one of those like weird things where he like promised Nick he'd never write his name down, right? Those annoying votes.
I mean, it could be that, or it could be that somebody might have tipped him off in terms of what the vote was going to be. Maybe it was Michelle or Julia said, "Hey, just so you know."
Oh, I definitely think he knows.
Yeah, he seemed to have known what was going on with that vote. So maybe he's sort of posturing himself to be able to move ahead with the Women's Alliance after this.
Yeah, I definitely think, and so they've got basically nowhere to go. The only thing they have is the Super Idol, which if Ty is not with them, so I think cutting the legs out from under Scott and Jason is the best move for Sydney because then they're relying on her.
So what is the next move for Sydney then? Okay, so she gets Nick out of the picture and removes the idea of, okay, so the men are going to bro down. And again, I don't know how that seems like a threat for down the road because there's only 4 of those guys, so not until you get down to 7 do you really have to worry about that. But
Right.
She gets rid of that threat. Nick is gone. She doesn't trust Nick. Do you think that she goes back to Jason and Scott and tries to rekindle Braun, or does she move forward with the women now?
I mean, what I think is nice is that she has the maneuverability. I mean, with the women, she's got herself. I mean, she's the hinge with the women, right? You got the 2 brains in her and the 2 brawn in her. I'm sorry, yeah, the 2 beauty in her, and that's an ideal position to be in. So to be at that third person where both sides are going to be looking for you in the final 5, to go against the others, I think that's a pretty strong position to be in. So I think that might be the move, but who knows what the. But wait, I really want to get back to like what you think the best time, the whole too soon thing, because that to me is really interesting. Like, what is the right time to make this move for Sydney?
Well, I kind of feel like that 10 is too early. I feel like that if those 4 are still together of Scott, Jason, Ty, and Nick, if that is an unbreakable 4, which I don't sense that it is,
Right.
you still have another week to do that. It just feels like that you've left Debbie and Aubrey still in the game. I don't know if they're totally loyal to Sydney. Even if Sydney ends up going with the women, we talked about this with Joey Amazing last season, where are you better off to go with the better challenge competitors where you could be the person who's most dominant and win the
Right.
challenges? I kind of feel like when that Women's Alliance gets down to 5, don't you think that Sydney is the person that's the most likely person, unless she just feels like that she can just go beast mode and then win the immunities once she gets some of these physical guy threats out of the game?
But I thought that's kind of what she was implying when she said it's better for me to be with the women at the end, right? I thought it was for her. It was a thick question of challenges.
So you feel like that's the best way to go? I just feel like that she's going to really stand out as the one person who's going to be most vulnerable. Like the people who she is beating in the challenges. As soon as she doesn't win one, she seems like a very likely person to say, let's just get rid of this person.
I just think the opportunity presented it. They had the 5 girls, 5 guys. The guys were splitting the votes. I just feel like the opportunity is there. And it's funny how this happens sometimes when there is a split vote like this, right? The idea was, okay, the majority alliance is splitting the votes between Aubrey and Debbie. That crack gets Sydney to thinking, oh, if they're splitting the votes, we don't need all, we just have to beat one of those blocks. And then the whole split ends up tumbling down. But if they hadn't been splitting the votes, I don't think that would have happened at all, right? If they had been saying we're voting 7 strong for Debbie, I don't think Sydney necessarily would have been able to have the leverage to say, okay, I'm going to pull away 5. I think sometimes the split has to exist for it to be exploited, and then it becomes unnecessary. We experienced this in when we voted out Wigglesworth.
Yeah, well, I kind of feel like in a lot of ways that this is a Cambodia-esque type situation because where if you're Sydney, and I don't hate the move, but I just don't love it because I feel like that she was in a secure spot in the game. She wasn't going anywhere for a while. She was going to be able to read the room for a little while longer before she ultimately makes her move. Now, this whole thing is now complete chaos where you have the 3 brains are still together, and is there a sub-alliance in that group of 3 potentially? Then you have Julia and Michelle seem like their own thing. you have the Braun group, you have Sydney, so you really have all these different pieces all over the place. Now, this is a much more chaotic situation here going into the final 9 for Sydney, and maybe she ends up coming out of all of this victorious, but I just feel like that she was in a spot where she really wasn't in danger. It really helps out a lot of other players in the game that had more, that looked like they were going to be going out before her. Now the whole thing is up for grabs.
But if you're playing to win, you can't just be playing to not be in danger. I mean, from her, if you're looking at her position in the final 7, you've got Scott, Jason, her, Ty, Nick, and Scott, Jason, her, Ty, Nick, Michelle, and Julia. All of those people are tighter to each other than they are to her. I feel like she's got, she's on the outs in that situation, and then she's lost her leverage. Playing to win, you've got to make the big move when the opportunity presents itself. I totally get what you're saying. Like, play the Sandra route, anyone but me. Don't, stick your neck out. But I think that it's also a viable, if maybe higher volatility way to play, where you say, I've got an opportunity. I need a resume. I mean, obviously, my bias is clear. I need a resume to come to have at the end. I've got to have taken control of this game in some way. And if I just coast to the end as Scott and Jason's friend, like, who's going to vote for me to win $1 million? On the other hand, maybe just sitting next to Scott and Jason is enough.
Right. If we were really going to get really nerdy and, mathematic about this, if we went into this round of the vote, what would you say, and don't talk about winners at it, just talk about like live on day 22, what would you feel like Sydney's percentage chance of winning the game was?
Right now, before
the vote, going into this round of play.
I mean, we know that other people like her, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, we know that she's generally well liked. She's partnered with 2 people who nobody likes Jason. People do like Scott, right? It seems like people that are like, it seems like people are grossed out by Jason, but she's tight with him, which is great for her. Mm-hmm. I think people look at Julia, right? They seem to think of her as kind of this like young, nice girl. I mean, I guess her, but she's got Ty. I guess like that alliance of 7 is pretty ideal for her. Only because they're all so disliked by everybody else.
Mm-hmm. I mean, if she just played it down to where she was and she ends up sitting, I mean, I find it hard to imagine that Scott and Jason would say, well, we want to sit at the end with Nick for whatever reason. It seems like that you could almost imagine a scenario where the Braun says, okay, the Braun 3 sticks together all the way to the end. You could certainly imagine Scott feeling that way. Jason might be a little more underhanded and saying like, oh, no, let's bring so-and-so because either Julia or Michelle, or maybe even saying that Nick is unlikable, let's sit next to him. But you could certainly imagine a scenario where she had maybe a 15% chance to win the game at the point that the action started tonight. And I don't see it being that much better chance than 15% coming out of this. And I feel like that now she has a much bigger target on her back because of this.
I don't know. I mean, I think you can make the same case to say, like, for her to go to the final 5 with her new alliance, she's with Aubrey, Debbie people find annoying. Same, Julia and Michelle, same situation. She was with them. And, and then there's Aubrey, who is having daily breakdowns. And, like, I think, Sydney versus Aubrey, I feel like Sydney's going to win. I could be wrong.
Because you had 2 people here that, I mean, if the alternative was to either put a dagger into either Debbie or Aubrey at this vote. I mean, those were the opportunities, and I'm not sure exactly what I guess it was going to be Debbie was where the votes were going to, I know it was a split vote, but that was going to be split on the side of Debbie.
It looked like it's because they were saying beauty votes Debbie, which I didn't get, because if they were trying to flush Aubrey's idol, they should have had a majority of the votes on Aubrey.
Yeah, but it just seemed like that, that's another...
Especially if they were going to tell her exactly how the vote split was working.
Who's a viable threat. All right, we talked about this a lot from Sydney's perspective. I'm sure that this is going to be... Everybody's going to have a take on this. But what about some of the other people that are in the mix? And I think specifically Michelle and Julia. I think that this is a fascinating decision from their part also, because they're also part of this 7-person alliance. I actually think that it was a much better night for Michelle and Julia and their chances to win the game tonight than it was for Sydney. I feel like that both of their win shares or their winning probabilities actually went up substantially based on this move tonight.
Okay, go ahead. Yeah.
Because in the scenario where it was the seven the seven-person alliance of Beauty and Braun voting together, I don't see a scenario where Michelle and Julia ended up on top of that. Whereas
it's the Beauty, it was final seven. The Beauty sticks tight and votes out Braun, and then you have Michelle, and nobody wants to go to the end with Ty. So you have Michelle, Julia, and Nick.
I mean, but there was really no evidence to show that the Beauty was sticking together.
Yeah, but there's no evidence to show any of these scenarios. They're all speculative.
Yeah, but I don't think that was being pushed ahead in the narrative of that Beauty was a tight four. It seems like that they were all selling each other out, and that, well, we can certainly ask Nick if that was something that was talked about tomorrow. But I feel like that now Michelle and Julia, that tight pair, has now sort of been freed up, where they do have some options of, they've got the women's alliance thing that they could be moving forward with. They could end up reconstituting with Jason and Scott. We saw Julia talking about tonight about how she's really tight with Scott, that's her person.
But she also says Jason will be gunning for us if we I don't see, I feel like the arguments you're making,
but they're not going to get blamed for this.
You think so? That's where you think it is. Do you think Sydney's going to be the one who's blamed? I just feel like the arguments you're making for why Jason and for why Michelle and Julia are in a good position are exactly the arguments I'm making for why it's a good move for Sydney. And like, I don't see why one is better than the other.
Because I see the Braun group sticking together and being sort of the ringleaders of that seven-person alliance, with Ty being with them and Nick being more on the outs. Whereas now I feel like, I kind of felt like the way the alliance was set up, Michelle and Julia were at best, fifth or sixth or seventh in that seven-person alliance, where now they are a tight pair and they have a lot of different options working together.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I feel like it's really strong for Sydney. I mean, in some ways, not being in a pair, everyone else is in pairs, and she's the one floater. Like, that can be very powerful, right? When you are, everyone knows now. It's like not, everyone knows now to target pairs.
Yeah. We'll see. It's going to be really, really fun to watch how this all plays out, and good discussion so far tonight. What about from Aubrey and Debbie? They both end up saved here because of this and end up in a decent spot. I mean, I think that their stock has to be back on the upswing after sort of really being at the bottom probably after Neil went home.
Yeah, and I think this is exactly what we were talking about last week, right? Where, like, if Neil had not gone home, then Braun and Beauty would have voted together, and then that alliance might have been more secure. They might have voted together again. And I really think that missing that opportunity to vote together, missing that opportunity to kind of like bond the alliance as an actual thing, it's what Scott said, right? Like Jeff asked Scott, how do you stop alliances from crumbling? And Scott said, don't go 6 days between votes. And I think that's really true.
Mm-hmm.
There's just a momentum to the game where, like, people want to scheme and people want to make moves, and like not getting denied that opportunity makes people spin a little bit. So for Debbie and Aubrey and certainly for Joe as well, this is, best case scenario. They go from being the definite targets, and I also think once one of them had been voted out, it becomes like then the next one would be next on the list in a way that's not true when Neil is pulled from the game magically.
Let's talk about what's going on with, now at this point, Joe. He's still there. I mean, is he just like, do you pencil him in for Final Five at this point?
Yeah. Who's going to spend the vote to vote Joe out?
Is he just like the Dan Lembo now of this season, where
who did he vote for? Did he vote? Who did he vote for?
He voted with the Women's Alliance. It was the women plus Joe.
Yeah, I think Joe's in a great spot, right? No one, although, you can also see Joe, just because he's kind of irascible. Sorry. My brain is a little bit juiced up. He's you can kind of see him like doing something terribly wrong, right, at a certain point, like getting irritated at someone and like trying, for not sticking with the plan.
I'm not sure. All right, speaking of sticking to the plan, let's talk about this whole thing that happened with Ty at Tribal Council, where he ends up volunteering all this information about the super idol. And yeah, I hear there, I don't know if there's idols, and I even hear that there's a super idol in this game.
Yeah,
two of the idols together.
But it seemed like other people had heard of it. It wasn't. This didn't seem like
You're
Ty was
right.
bringing news.
Very perceptive, Stephen. It seemed like Debbie knew about it. It turned into like a whole thing like, well, Julie, I guess if you don't know about it, you're not talking to the right people. But it did seem as though that was definitely something that was talked about to everybody else almost except for Julia. Did you feel like that Julia flipped her vote at tribal council because of that conversation? Is this another situation like we had a couple of weeks ago? Because it seemed like Debbie was trying to sell her.
I felt that vote was locked up. I don't think anyone flipped. If Joe was voting, I mean, Ty voted for Jason. I feel like that vote is locked, 100%.
So is Debbie just trying to sell the fact that, hey, I'm going home tonight, so I got to really fight for my life at tribal council?
I thought she was, that's exactly what I thought Debbie was doing. I thought she was, like, pretending to be the person who was going home, and so, like, she was playing the part that everyone expected of her based on her presumed, targetedness.
Okay, so who was worse in this episode? Was it Ty, who talked about the super idol when that was not public information, or was it Nick talking about how that it's going to be one of the brains going home? Both
the best part of Ty
and in the challenge.
God. And first of all, the best part of the Ty thing was when he tried to backpedal, and he was like, "Oh, I don't know, maybe someone was lying to me. I don't know anything about it. Someone said it," and it was like so ridiculous. Yeah. But no, Nick was really bad because when. First, the kind of like cocky gloating at the challenge and at tribal, those were bad. I thought for Nick, yeah, but I thought even worse was when he pulled Aubrey aside. And at first, I was like, this is a really smart move for Nick. Aubrey's at the bottom. Why not try to like get her to be loyal to you? Create a bond here. Act like you're her savior. Maybe you're getting something started. But then he just like he both. Tells her all of the plan, including where the vote split is going. We're splitting the vote. It's you and her. He gives her so much detail that if she did have the wherewithal to like create a counter alliance, she would have the knowledge to do so. By telling her they're splitting the votes, by telling her, where the votes are going, Nick is giving her the power to just pull over one or two people and undo it. And he's also kind of like condescending to her, right? And that like, if you're trying to create a secret alliance with her and act like her savior, acting like a jerk to her is the wrong way to do that.
I mean, I feel like that he was doing it somewhat tongue-in-cheek. Like, I mean, he called himself out like, yeah, I'm being kind of arrogant about it.
Yeah, but she also thought he was being arrogant.
I mean, that's a good question for Aubrey. How much was it a turnoff? I mean, what was Aubrey going to go with this idea before this better option came along? It seemed like that she was fine to go along with it.
I mean, the funny thing, like Nick said, like in his confessional, there's, I'm being a jerk, but there's nothing she can do about it yet. Like, why are you setting yourself up to be blindsided? Like, why are you?
It seemed to make almost no strategic sense why he was calling out the move to the. Like, if he was trying to set something else up where one of the brains wasn't actually going home, but he still wanted the split vote to do that, that would make sense to me. But based on what he wanted to have happen, I don't really understand the strategic move.
I did that. I mean, we've seen that happen sometimes. I think when people like try to build relationships with the person going home, acting like their savior. Mm-hmm. I don't know if it's ever effective. Though. I mean, the 3 times that I know about it, it was when, that's why Tyson flipped his vote, right? He wanted to like save Parvati or save Russell and like, be his savior in Heroes versus Villains, and that worked out disastrously. When I told Abby that I had saved her at one point, and that was a disaster for me. It never works, I don't know. There's something there.
The one thing I could say that the reason why he might have been doing it is because if he wants to be seen as, the #1 foot soldier of Jason and Scott, sort of being the guy who is like really saying like, hey, brains, you're all going home. Like, I think that maybe being that person, if you're trying to be a person who's pledging the Jason and Scott fraternity, that does seem like a move you might want to do to endear yourself to them.
Oh, I thought it was the opposite. I thought he was trying to get control of Aubrey. Like,
no. I'm talking about where the public sort of like,
what he says to them.
Right, a brain's going home tonight. There's nothing you guys can do about it. Like making himself come off as being very unlikable and not somebody who's seen as a jury threat in the eyes of Jason and Scott.
But that's not what he himself said, that he was doing it because he wanted to benefit from the them going home. Or it's like he's like, if a brain's gonna go home tonight, I want to be the one who benefits from that, so I'm gonna like use Aubrey.
Sure, that's in terms of telling Aubrey to split her vote. I'm talking about like him publicly saying in front of everybody.
Oh, but was it in front of everybody? Oh,
I mean, he both at the immunity challenge. He said, "Hey,
okay, I'm sorry.
And also at tribal council, he also was saying.
I'm sorry. I missed your transition.
No problem.
I'm a little bit out of it. Yeah. Why be? I kind of thought he's just like having fun. I thought he was like chewing the scenery a little bit, and, in a way that is not great strategy, but is like fun television.
Yeah. Okay. What else from tonight's episode?
And also, there's just arrogance, right? Like that's the other thing. Like, I even thought even more than when they were saying it at the at Tribal and the challenge, when they stepped down from the challenge, and Nick's like, well, I hope it doesn't bite me in the butt, and Scott's like, don't worry, buddy, it won't. Like that to me was even more arrogant than like Nick being like, well, it's one of the brains going home tonight, because it was just kind of like, it's kind of those like muttered conversations that are even more self-satisfied than like the grandstanding conversations.
Yeah. Okay. I liked your tweet tonight that you said that it's always a great idea to tell the enemy your strategy just when you have them on the ropes. It always works for a Batman villain.
Yeah. It really didn't Nick seem like a Batman, and someone else said Bond villain. It really does seem like didn't that was what it seemed like? Like he like laboriously laid out his plan to the person going home.
Yeah. Very good stuff. All right. You want to get into some of these questions?
Oh, yeah. The only other thing I wanted to say was I thought one other thing that I really liked that Sydney did was she locked up Aubrey and Debbie before she went to Michelle and Julia, right? And I think that's really smart, like to get the people who are not your allies to agree to the vote and then go to your allies with the plan to flip. Because I think it's important to like have because when you go to the people who are part of the core alliance, they're going to be nervous. They're going to say, I don't even know if this is going to work out. But if you can say, oh, I've already locked up the others, then that's better than coming to them being like, oh yeah, I guess we better talk to those others. And there's like confusion. I think coming to the people who are going to flip, talk to the people outside the alliance before going to people inside the alliance. I thought that was a smart move.
One more thing before we get to the questions. I brought up that I liked the move a lot for Julia and Michelle. You said that you weren't either, that you liked it much more for Sydney.
I liked it for Julia and Michelle too. I mean, yeah.
What about the idea for Michelle where Nick was an ally, voting out an ally here in this spot? Do you like that for Michelle still?
Oh, yeah, that's interesting. And Nick really actually valued that line. We know Michelle didn't love Nick, but we do think that Nick really liked Michelle. Yeah, you're right. Like, to vote out someone who thinks he's working with you, good point.
Yeah, I don't know. We'll see. I mean, it's really like, there were pros and cons for a lot of the people involved with the move. Like, I don't think it was just like a clear, like, black and white issue of like, oh, no, this was definitely a good move for all the people involved with it. Obviously, for Debbie and Aubrey, no question about it. For Joe, no question about it. Great move all around for them. But I think that there's still, there's pros and cons with the Sydney, Julia, and Michelle part of it.
I just think especially Julia and Michelle, to go to the final seven with all of those big physical competitors, and then Ty, who's like the jury threat to end all jury threats, like they couldn't be in a better position. No one at final seven, who's going to vote for Julia and Michelle when the other people left in the game are Jason, Scott, Sydney, Ty, and Nick? Julia and Michelle are guaranteed a place in the finals. With
could they win it? Could they win it in that scenario?
Yeah, because you got Nick and Jason. You win. That's it.
I don't know. I like it more for them because I kind of feel like that they can get now further in the game, and then they still have each other to sort of flip the numbers against a less structured group. I think that she can. They now have other moves they could make. They could pair up with Debbie and Aubrey at a certain point. I think that they still have those possibilities left in the game. Whereas I think it was much more of a drawing dead situation for them, going down to where maybe they have like a upside of Natalie Tenorelli, but I don't know if they have winner upside.
I don't know. I feel like that they were in a great spot there, and I feel like Sydney now has. We totally disagree.
Okay, good. That's fun. That's what people like. All right. This is from Carrie Graveline. Did Jason plant the all-girl alliance in Sydney's mind? Is it worth the risk for her to betray Scott and Jason? All right. So this is interesting. Was there inception that happened where Jason was like, I'm really worried about there being a girls' alliance. So, was he talking about that? And then that put that idea in Nick's mind, and then Nick said it to Julia, and then Sydney's like, "What? Girls' alliance? That's crazy."
No, and then Jason goes and talks about it with Sydney. Like Michelle, Sydney just thought that like they were like keeping tabs on her. And then Jason mentions it, and he's like, "Oh, you think you want to? You're afraid of an all-girls alliance? I'll give you an all-girls alliance." It's funny. Like I'm gonna write about this a little bit in my blog, just like this like myth of the all-girls alliance. It's always this thing that people are scared of, and it almost never materializes. You can really count on one hand the number of successful all-girls alliances.
Mm-hmm.
But this time it worked. But yeah, maybe you're right. Maybe it was. Maybe Jason did plan it.
Okay. Let's keep going. This is from Christopher Frick.
Christopher Frick wants to know, did Nick have the quickest rise and fall from power since the Silence Gaither? Nick had the RC exit, actually. He's better, lasts into the merge and then goes home with the first tribal council. But I believe Nick broke RC's record, right? Because I think RC went home.
I believe so. No, I don't think it was necessarily where. I feel like actually it was kind of similar to Cass last season, where he didn't go to tribal council, but it's like, oh, great last episode right before they go home, where it's like, oh, Cass is really in a great
spot. Running the show, yeah.
Right, running the show, and ready to vote off Andrew Savage this week, and then the early merge definitely screws that up. This was a little more straightforward in terms of what happened, or at least a little more sudden in terms of what happened. But yeah, it looked like, oh, best week yet, and then no, they're out.
Connor Young wants to know, what's Ty's reasoning for voting for Jason? Is he planning on framing someone else with a vote?
Yeah, let's talk that through.
I mean, my gut is it's one of those things where it's like, oh, I told Nick I'd never vote for him when we were back on the beauty beach. But is there a strategic rationale?
I don't know, because I feel like it's almost like if there was a strategic part of it, I mean, do you vote for one of the brains women? I mean, it seems like if you were going to just vote for anybody, why not vote for Joe? I mean, why not vote for somebody who isn't going to be a powerful person? It seems like out of anybody, it would seem like voting for Jason is really going to piss him off.
Well, but what might have happened is that this new alliance got out of control, right? Like, Sydney was like, I'll just pull over the girls. Suddenly you got Joe there. Someone mentions it to Ty. Suddenly Ty's on board.
Okay, so hypothetically, how about this? That what if Ty got the heads up, here's what's going on at the vote tonight, and now he's really got to distance himself from Jason and Scott. What better way when they say, all right, Ty, you're part of this guys' alliance, you're part of the Brawn, and he's like,
no,
what are you talking about? I voted for Jason last night. He's been pissing me off forever.
Is there a chance that someone voted for Jason because, I mean, it wouldn't make sense to vote for Jason as idle defense because one vote. Is there a chance that he's worried about the Super Idol where they play it for Nick, but they're still voting for Aubrey? Oh, maybe he's worried. Here's what he's worried about. I'm going to guess.
Okay.
Maybe.
Any day. Whenever you're ready.
They play the Super Idol. Nick is safe. Aubrey plays an idol that Neil magically gave her. And then there's like one, I don't know, maybe he's worried about a random vote flung his way and he wants to counteract that. I don't know.
This is kind of a crazy idea, but is there any merit, should Scott have gotten the Super Idol together to save Nick tonight?
No, definitely not. I think it's such a powerful tool.
Hey, don't talk about Nick that way, Steven. He's probably listening.
Yeah. Is he? I hope. I mean, I hope not. I hope none of these players are listening. It's just
you just got to pretend they're not. That's the move.
Yeah, I had to stop listening to everything. It's just awful. It's the worst. Yeah. No, I think not, right? You don't think so?
No, probably not. But if you were that concerned about the Women's Alliance and then it's like, it's happening! It happened! At that point, like, should the guys freak out and put the Super Idol together? I think it's an interesting discussion.
Yeah, but you really have to know when the votes are coming out, you're kind of like, well, your head is spinning. And they definitely know this was not a 5-5 vote, right? This was they had 3 or whatever with them.
I mean, how much time do you have to do it? Like, let's say in that situation, and I don't think they should have done it, but it would have been interesting to see. So because the commercials were like, this week, Tribal Council will blindside you. I was like, oh, okay, well, what's going to happen? Then I was kind of thinking, like, okay, well, obviously Nick is going home here, but then maybe we're going to get the Super Idol after all.
That's what I liked. I felt. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
I didn't feel that blindsided by tribal counts. I kind of felt like the Nick boot was sort of, pretty straightforward based on what we saw in the edit.
Yeah, and in fact, that's what I loved about this episode was that Tribal Council was kind of straightforward. Like, they really spelled it out, and I love these episodes where they do this, where it's not like, is it A or is it B? But it was like, you see how the plan unravels, just step by step, how Sydney comes up with her idea and how Nick sinks his own boat. And you just see it unfolding in slow motion over the episode. And, like, those are my favorite episodes, where it's not like, I don't know, which of these two disposable people, but it's like you just watch it happen.
Okay. But in the actual practice of this happening, so let's say that, okay, Scott is like, all right, super-powered idol, activate. Okay, Nick, the next person voted out is Nick. Nick, come up. Do they have up until Nick puts his torch out? Like, could they, like, if Nick's torch is extinguished, the tribe is spoken, can they still say while he's still there before he leaves? Like, do you only have, like, 10 seconds to do it?
I think it's probably the torch, right? Probably the torch snuff is the, smuff, and that's it. Once the torch has been,
Okay, so I think you probably just have to be like, hey, Nick, don't go anywhere. Hold on. Hold up, bro.
Yeah. I wouldn't, like, test it, but I wonder, like, at what point, because, like, it's obviously going to, at that point, it's going to be, like, a producer call, right? Like, if Jeff's thing is coming down, what they're going to allow.
Yeah. It's interesting to see, like, exactly what the cutoff is. All right. What about
probably the official cutoff should be the torch snuff, if anyone is listening out there.
We think so. Yeah. All right. Andre says, did CBS plan Neil's exit as a way to avoid a conflict between him and the ice cream man? That was pretty weird, right? That we've only have, like, 2 players in the history of Survivor that are even associated with ice cream. And then Neil goes home, and then ice cream reward this week.
Well, I don't think it's weird, and here's why. The fact that Neil went home, the fact that Neil was associated with ice cream, probably people were talking a lot about ice cream back at camp. Probably people were fantasizing about ice cream. And Survivor is kind of magical in the way that the rewards that you're offered are going to be the things you're craving the most as a way to really motivate the players to play. And I think it's all connected.
Yeah. Okay. They had, like, a baseball reward in the season that John Rocker was on. I wonder, though, if if these things are sort of, like, coordinated. Like, I don't think they did it because Neil was medevac, but I wonder if it was coming because Neil was on the season.
Yeah, it really could have been.
Okay. All right. What about Tim Marzullo says, did the edit make it obvious that Nick is going with no confessionals from Debbie, the supposed target?
Debbie did have
was it obvious that Nick was going tonight?
I thought it was, but in a great way. Like, I thought it was really clear that, I thought it was they really just did a great job of showing the fall of Nick. The rise of Sydney and the fall of Nick.
Yeah, the moment that really, sold it for me was when Nick talked about how he was looking forward to his first tribal council. Never look forward to the tribal council. They will never show, the person that's gonna have an uneventful tribal council talking about how they're really looking forward to it.
Yeah, Monica said that. Whenever they show that's it. You're done. Like, looking forward, yeah.
It's like, boy, Jeff, I've never been to tribal council. I haven't been to tribal council in a while, but really, I got a good feeling about it tonight. So I can't wait to
never say it, because, you don't want them to have it if you do get voted out that night. Even if you're so certain, even if you've got the super idol in your pocket, still don't say it.
Yeah, don't say that.
Allison Snyder wants to know, I think there's a great blindside, but do you think they targeted the right person in Nick? That's a good question. We haven't really talked about it. Who should they have? Who should this new all-girls alliance, women's alliance, who should they have voted for?
Well, I actually did like that part of the move by Sydney. I feel like that was the right target from Sydney's perspective because then she still has the options, and like the great survivors love to keep their options open. So Sydney potentially could go back to work with Braun next week. She could potentially still continue to vote with the women, but she can sort of decide which way she wants to play it out. So I do think that the right target was Nick. I kind of feel like for Michelle and Julia, I feel like that they are able to sort of, have more options as well in terms of just like, I always like to think about like, you're playing a game of pool and all the balls are all sort of bunched together. And I really do feel like that this was like a break to knock the balls all over the place. And I think that gives people like like Michelle and Julia more of a shot now. So I don't mind it that much.
You're so dogged about this being good for Michelle and Julia. You just said Michelle and Julia should not have targeted Nick.
No,
earlier.
I said that I don't mind it as much for them because I feel like that they weren't that it really wasn't happening, the Michelle, Nick, Julia thing.
Right. But if you want to, if you're in Michelle and Julia, you want people like presumably like everyone wants people out of the game who don't help their game, right?
Mm-hmm.
Who would their ideal target be?
Say it one more time.
Who, like, if Michelle and Julia could pick the person to go home, who should it be?
It's a good question because nobody's really targeting them. I feel like that the person they have ties to almost everybody at this point in the game because you might say Debbie because they really maybe don't have that much going on with her.
Yeah.
But they do have connections to almost everybody.
Yeah. And Debbie and Michelle had a moment, maybe Julia, not Julia. And I would say Jason, except Jason, I think Jason is kind of going to be the GOAT, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, although he did have the scene, I almost felt like that Jason and Scott both tonight had the emotional moment at the first time, the humanizing moment this season for both of them. Both of them working on like their final tribal council speeches.
Yeah. There was a lot of emotion. It was interesting that both Jason and Scott had very emotional, family-oriented episodes. Ty, speaking to Buddha. It was. But the fact that when Jason, when they're eating ice cream and Jason shouts over like, "Hey, you guys can have fun over there," what an innocuous thing to say. And then Michelle gets angry at him about it and is like, I couldn't believe Jason said have fun over there to those people. What a jerk. Like what was it? A, like what is she actually thinking when she says that? And B, like that is a loser's edit, like that is, I tweeted this, like that is when, there's no way Jason can win when he says something as benign and good-spirited as enjoy yourselves, and he gets like people talking crap about him as a result of that. Like that is a loser's edit.
Yeah, don't tell me how to act, bro.
What was
or don't tell other people how to act when I'm already enjoying how they're acting. They're acting fine, bro.
Yeah, but like he was just like saying have fun, and I feel like everyone in that situation would also say the same thing. They'd just be like, listen, you guys enjoy yourselves. Don't be, don't consider us. And she's like, how dare they enjoy themselves? What?
Well, that some of these survivors, they don't take it well when they don't win a reward.
Yes,
I'm sure,
true.
as you saw demonstrated many times last season.
Yeah.
And so, there's some people that really want to be sort of pouty about it. And then it's like, he's like, hey, guys, come on, enjoy yourself. Come on, have some fun.
So you think Michelle was just salty?
Yeah, she was salty about not winning the reward, which is fine. Which is understandable. Matt Forsyth wants to know, why do people who go to their first tribal council deep in the game often get voted out at the first opportunity? First RC, now Nick. Certainly, you had Cass last season as well. I do think that
I think that's it.
I'm trying to think. I think there's some other people that we could certainly look it up. I mean, I do think in the case of somebody like an RC, it's an anomaly. Okay, they would have been voted out at their first tribal council, possibly, if they just would have gone there. In the case of Nick, I think that's probably the same thing. With other people, it just works out where they weren't in danger at that point, but then it turns out that so. I think it's too small sample size.
But I do think there's something, I've always said that there's something to, the best preparation for Survivor is going to tribal council, and that's part of the philosophy behind intentional modsing, right? It's not just that you become small and therefore less threatening. You also become really good at Survivor. Going to tribal council is really when you sort of learn how to play the game.
Iron sharpens iron.
Or tribal sharpens iron. And I think that. After you've been to tribal, suddenly the strategy is real. Suddenly you're voting people off. Suddenly the alliances that you've been building have trust. Suddenly you learn how important it is to scramble and how to scramble. And I think that, last season, for example, part of the reason I wanted to go to tribal and vote out Monaco was just so that we could have our tribal legs, because you do before you go to tribal, you do it all kind of feels very hypothetical, and then when you go and it's like, oh, this is real, this is how it happens, and so I do definitely think you can be hurt by not going to tribal for 22 days.
Okay, all right. Last couple of questions, Alex. Was it a good idea?
Alex R wants to know.
Okay.
I just cut it out. Was it a good idea for Sydney to confront her alliance about Nick's obvious conversation with Julia? No, right?
No, I didn't think that was such a hot move for Storm to really, be seen as somebody who is pretty turned up about all this, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. You kind of ideally, you say, what would Kim Spradlin do in this situation? And it's probably not call out everybody in front of this. Now, if you say, what would Sandra do in this situation? Then she might do exactly that. So, what do we know? What do we know?
Yeah, nothing. Not enough to win.
Not
4
enough
losses here.
I think that the game is about charming people. I don't think that that's probably the best way to handle that confrontation.
Yeah, and this is it. It's like things come down more to like how you say them than what you say. I actually think Jason handled it really well. When Sydney comes over and confronts them, Jason immediately takes her aside and says like, "Hey, I've got your back. I know Nick is a jerk. He was saying about a women's alliance, but I'm with you." I thought he really could not have handled that little thing better.
Okay.
I know.
All right.
Yeah.
Superior Hominid, was Ty's comment tonight worse than stick with the plan? No, because didn't end up with didn't end up with his son getting
with destroying his own hair.
Right.
yeah. That was the problem with stick to the plan. Was it triggered everyone else to know that he was that there was a plan.
Yeah. All right, Steven. All right, let's have our final word on this Sydney. Who was this best for tonight? For the people that are going to be leaving comments at the end of this, do you want to one more time make your case for Sydney?
Yeah, and again, I'm a little loopy, but nevertheless, I stand by the Sydney thing. Sydney, first of all, this is Sydney's signature move, right? Sydney has so far been the third to Jason and Scott. Now she has created an alliance, and I really believe that going into the finals, you want to have made an alliance that's yours, so that you can show up there and say, "I built this thing. I did this thing. This is how I was in control of this game." I think she did it without, with getting enough people on board who are in her boat, so that suddenly it's not she's going to be the one culpable person, right? She's got Julia and Michelle with her, who are also blindsiding their alliance. Somehow she's also got, she's got Debbie and Aubrey with her, who have nowhere else to go. And somehow she may or may not have Ty with her as well. I think if Sydney goes to the end with the girls, she's the middle person in a set. And we've always said when there's a 5, you want to be the 5th. You want to be the one person who's not part of a pair. That's a really strong power position. And so in this 100th episode, as you go off the rails and choose Michelle and Julia, I'm curious to hear what your thoughts are.
I think the history of Survivor is littered with players who made their big move somewhere along the way, which opens up the doors for other people to win. I think it was a great night for Julia and Michelle. I think it was a great night for Aubrey and Debbie. I wonder maybe was, either one of these two pairs perhaps could be the Steven and JT who get to the end of this thing where they did not have an obvious path to the end. Now, I do think that the playing field is wide open, and I feel like where there was almost no path for Debbie and Aubrey or Julia and Michelle to get to the end before this move, I now can see a path where either of those pairs, specifically for Julia and Michelle, to move forward, and I think that they both have a shot now. They have a break for daylight where I think that they would have been picked off probably before Final 5 for both of them before this. And I think that Sydney is probably going to get caught up because now, can she be trusted moving forward? And did she expose herself as a huge physical threat tonight after that challenge as well, Steven?
Everyone knows Sydney's a huge physical threat, and she didn't win. I think that
So wasn't it better for her to be under the radar as a huge physical threat?
I just don't believe that. It's like people say about Joe England. Oh, he should lose a few challenges because then people won't know he's that good. No, we're still going to know he's that good. He just happened to lose a challenge.
Right,
people
but
know.
So he's winning challenges, and then also if he's making big moves where he's flipping around on alliances too, at that point, doesn't he become even more exposed?
Right. I hear what you're saying. I just don't. No. I mean, I think that it's not like Sydney's not like I just said she's like Joe England. Now I'm gonna say she's not like Joe England. Where it's like she she's not like there's a lot of physical players out there. You got Scott Pollard out there, right? He's a professional athlete. You've got Jason. He's a professional bounty hunter. I don't think it's like that for her.
All right, the best part of all this, we will be together in person next week to see how it all plays out in front of the audience at the Carolines on Broadway to see what happens next and who goes home next. So it'll be great fun 1 week from tonight. So no live show next Wednesday night, but we will be recording the video once again, and we'll try to get that up for you guys by Thursday morning, audio and video. Once again, Stephen, who's getting the fishy tonight when your People blog drops?
Well, it's Sydney. Oh shoot! I mean, like you have to read it.
Yeah, well, we'll find out why and leave comments and stuff.
Yeah. Please leave comments. Leave comments on my blog. Leave comments on the know-it-alls. I love them. I read them all. I like to engage with them.
You're very responsive.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, and especially when it's like an interesting debate or I love that. And Rob, happy 100 to us.
Well, happy 100 to us. Happy 100 to the Survivor Know-It-Alls. We'll be back together for podcast and Know-It-Alls number 101 1 week from tonight. Very excited. Can't believe we did it.
Who would have thought? We were just a podcast in a dream.
Yeah.
Mike in a dream.
That's right. That's right. All right. So all good stuff. What's the hashtag? Happy 100?
Happy 100.
Happy 100?
Rappy 100. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Very good. Follow Stephen Fishback on Twitter. He is at Stephen Fishback.
And follow Rob at Rob Sesternino.
Oh, thank you, Stephen. That's kind of you. Yeah. All right. Also on Thursday, busy Thursday, we'll have our Nick Majorano exit interview. We will have we were recording the recap with Chaos Cast, so very excited about that. And then also get your voicemails in. Akiva Winokur from the Kaoh to the Seinfeld podcast. He's also closing in on the 100 podcast with me club. He will also be in that rarefied air soon, and we will take your voicemails. So get those in robbinswebsite.com/voicemail. Looking forward to a busy Thursday and your comments on robbinswebsite.com. Take care, everybody. Bye.
Give my love to Cass.
I will. Bye.
Bye.